Hi, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 4 of My Words, Our Journey. Be careful what you wish for. I'm your host, Monty, and today we'll begin with Chapter 11. Never forget where he was the moment he realized what the killer meant by his comment. Then I'll keep you posted on my progress. It was late Sunday afternoon, and he was sitting at the kitchen table at his parents' house, talking about Uncle Ricky and how the family was going to try to help him through his latest and most traumatic experience. That's when his mother's sister, Julie, called. Marcus knew right away there was trouble. His mother did not hide it well. Never had, never will. Marcus and his father sat at the table in silence, waiting for her to get off the phone. Since she was doing none of the talking and all the listening, the pair had no idea what to expect. But when she hung up the phone and told the tale that Julie had told her, somehow he knew. He just knew what the killer meant. He would be tracking the killer's progress by the murders that were committed along the way. As his mother finished, pale and feeling sick, Marcus excused himself. He needed to be alone to think about what he caused. He told himself it was okay. Ricky and Grandma were still alive. But no, everything wasn't okay. People were dying because he probably did exactly what the killer wanted him to do. As he sat in the home office that had once been his bedroom, Marcus thought about everything that had happened. It was a long way between his uncles and his grandmothers. Could there be one or more in between that he didn't know about yet? He prayed no. Marcus passed on dinner with his parents. Instead, he went from deep dive to deep dive, looking for, well, he wasn't sure. He just knew. When he found it, he would know. It was over 3 hours in when he saw a small Facebook post from someone he must have gone to high school with, but could not remember for the life of him who it was. A simple post, really. Just a friend asking for prayer for another friend. But it was a post that took him to the realization that this killer could be heading towards anyone that he had ever known, been friends with, family. It was a weight that felt heavy on his chest, the pain that a rational person would say he played a big role in causing. What was he to do? After finding a comforter and pillow in the closet, he crashed on the floor next to the window. He wondered what the killer was doing right then, where he was headed, who was next. Was there anything he could do about it? Even if he did go to the authorities, what would he tell them? He knew so little and had no idea when or where he'd strike next, or when he'd be in Wytheville. No description, a text, and that was it. What had he said? If I ever think you've contacted the police, I disappear for good. That just couldn't happen, he quickly thought. But what price had others already paid, and who was still to pay? And if others found out about his knowledge of what was happening, or his communication with the killer, would they understand? Or would he be villainized? He had plenty of questions, and not one answer. But he had also followed his gut, and that was what he was going to continue to do. He and the killer would finish this. The killer woke early the following morning. He had a decision to make, and decided it would be fun to add a little twist to the game. So after a Walmart run and some coffee, he would reach out to his new friend, Marcus. He had to admit, he was a little excited to see how that went. So, after his chores were done, at 8:15, he sent a text. Marcus was already at the gym and had been there for 2 hours when his phone let him know he had a text. "Let's chat," is all it said. Marcus took a deep breath, took a swig of a sports drink, 0 sugar, and replied, "Are you enjoying this?" A minute went by without a response. "Probably more than you are." Marcus had so much he wanted to say, but calmed himself down and waited to see what the killer wanted. So no text from either party for nearly 5 minutes. Finally, "I need your help with something. I'm at a crossroad. Should I go north or south? Before you reply, I don't want anything back from you other than north or south. Understood? Anything else or no reply, and I will go north, and then I will go south. And you don't want that." Marcus read the text twice. Twisted is all he could think of. Now he was being pulled in even deeper because it was up to him to blindly choose the fate of others. No idea of where the killer was. No idea what was at the end of either direction, but knowing he had to pick one or the other. Another text. "You have 30 seconds. Marcus took his towel and wiped his forehead. "South," is what he replied, for no reason other than he had to choose. His reply for his stressful exchange was a simple smiley face emoji. North was Springfield, Missouri, and south was Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So, Pine Bluff it was. This time there was no particular reason he was traveling on this trip. He needed to keep the game fresh and unpredictable, but also trackable for Marcus. He didn't know what today would hold, only that when it presented itself, he'd know. So taking 5:30, he headed south, still excited from the text exchange, as well as the challenge the game would present today. Chapter 12. First thing upon arrival, his exit plan. It looked to him like taking 63 out of town would take him right back to 40. With that in mind, he would start close to 63 and work his way out until he found his reason for being there today. Eating a chili dog, onion rings, and drinking a cold Coke, he sat in the parking lot across from a few hotels watching. Just watching the day, listening to Pink Floyd on XM, and just watching. He almost missed it, but a large group of folks walked out of the hotel closest to him. They were heading to the adjacent pool, with all accessories in tow. There were probably 15 of them. He didn't count, but if he guessed, it was probably grandparents, kids, and grandkids. They looked so happy, he thought. In that moment, he decided they were playing his game today, but with different rules. He would have no communication with any of them. He would park the car next to the fence that was next to the pool, walk around the block while they were getting situated, and when he came back around, he would empty the revolver randomly, but with purpose. Let the game decide what happened after that. His goal, really, was only to make the national news feeds. As he strolled around the block, and then finally turned the corner, it felt good to be outside. Maybe he'd take a break from all this for a day or two and recharge before the next phase. Let this one sink in. He was young and had stamina for days, but there was an end game he needed to be ready for after all this. There were folks around, but no one close enough to cause an issue, so the gun came out of his waistband and the shots rang out indiscriminately. He felt good that at least three of his shots had hit their targets, but he'd find out later on the internet. Never breaking stride, he opened the passenger side of the door, slid over, and drove off. Smooth. The killer had almost been right when he guessed about the family dynamic. It was the grandkids, their parents, and then the husband's mother and her new boyfriend of 2 months. It was his first time meeting the family, and he had been such a wonderful impression. Unfortunately, he was the first to die that day, as he stood laughing and joking with the oldest child, whom luckily was in the water. Unlucky for him, the dead body fell from the pool side on top of him in the water, turning it instantly crimson. The second to go was the husband. He had bent down to pick up his wife's sunglasses and water bottle when the shot caught him in the side of the head. He died instantly. The remainder of the shots fell short of their targets, -1. The killer had been correct. He had hit 3 targets. The third had nothing to do with the family, however, and the killer probably hadn't even noticed her. Her name was Hannah. She was 17 years old and the daughter of the assistant manager of the hotel. There that day to help out because they were short-staffed. One of her tasks that day was to make sure the pool area was kept clean, tidy, and well-stocked with towels. The towels Hannah had brought out now were sinking to the bottom of the pool, and she lay alive but unable to move next to the filter on the east side of the pool. She could hear sirens and folks screaming. She also saw the pool water turning red just before she blacked out. The rest area was just like every other rest area off the interstate, always buzzing with activity. It was there he felt safest over the past several days. Once he settled in, he began his search. It did not take long for him to find updates about the events in Pine Bluff. Everything he read reported the same thing: 2 dead and 1 in critical condition, and if she made it, she'd be paralyzed. That was a general description of the car. White, one witness said. Chevy, another said a Chrysler. No one had gotten the plate. One witness said it may have been a New Mexico plate. White or maybe a Hispanic male. Kind of tall, maybe skinny, or it may have just been baggy clothes. Perfect, he thought. And for the next day and a half, the killer did not dwell on the game. He rested, took walks around another small town, ate too much, even went to the movies, took in a band at a local bar, acted normal for a little while, stayed low and out of trouble. He already knew what he's doing next, so there was no need for any planning at this point, just recharging. Marcus, on the other hand, was freaking out. He was, for the first time in his life, following the national news. It just reinforced why he had chosen to go news deaf and blind over the years. Now that it all changed, and what he read about the incident in Pine Bluff broke his heart. Just innocent people doing innocent and decent things. Now they were dead or living through the nightmare. He wasn't sure which was worse. Maybe that question would be answered when this was all over. All he knew at the moment was that his heart was broken. The killer had caused a severe blow, and he wanted to reach out to the killer. But was that allowed? What would he or could he say that would make a difference? Chapter 13. The killer had never been this far east. He knew the majority of his trip from this point on would be in Tennessee, taking 40 to 81 to Wytheville, Virginia. He had one more surprise for Marcus before the finale. He thought he'd like this one about as much as he liked the previous, but he didn't care. He was proving a point, playing a game, and winning. His next stop would be Maryville, Tennessee, specifically a cabin rental. He did not know the number, but he did know what the vehicle he was looking for looked like. Thanks again to social media, he had seen where one of Marcus's best friends and former co-workers was celebrating his anniversary at the cabins, and he was very proud of his Ford Bronco that he made sure was in every picture. He had also learned that the couple had 3 kids. They were young. He would not be intentionally harming the children. Their parents appeared to be weak and focused on others' approval, and with them out of the picture, the kids may have a chance. He was doing them a favor, really. It had been an easy drive, so the killer made good time. Good for him, bad for the family that he was searching for. As he took his first pass through the quaint little cabin subdivision, he spotted the Bronco and the proud owner grilling right next to it. Easier than expected, he thought. As he parked in the public parking spot only a short distance away, he watched as the wife brought out all the fixings to be added to the grill, the children running around her feet. His history, his life experiences told him that while they appeared happy on the outside, behind closed doors, it was always the opposite. The fights, the arguments, the late night fights and early morning slamming doors. He was here for a different reason, but if he could help the kids along the way, he was more than happy to oblige. For this one, he would wait. There were too many people floating around, too much activity in tight quarters. He would wait until the fires burned down and the lights went out. Then he would play. He wasn't so much worried about interference, but he was worried about a better description of the car, plate, and him. There were no security cameras, and from the looks of the cabins, the doors and the windows would be easily broken into, if not already left unlocked. So, he leaned back in his chair, lowered the hat over his eyes, and fell asleep without a care in the world. When he woke, he took a stroll around the dirt and gravel one-lane road that circled around the cabins. He could hear a distant laugh here and there, maybe a cough, a dog bark. But for the most part, it seemed like the guests were settling in for the night. By the time he finished the walk, he was ready to begin. There was a slight breeze that carried the remaining smell of grilled hot dogs and hamburgers and the faint sound of a dog barking. Otherwise, it was like everything was standing still, waiting for him to play his next round. As he placed the knife on the screen window on the backside of cabin number 7, he held his breath, listening for anything out of the ordinary. Nothing? Time to go. The gun was again in his waistband, but he did not intend to use it this evening. His weapon of choice was an extremely sharp knife. The cabins were not very big. Some would say they were cozy. He would have said small, but it was a perfect place because the windows were low enough to the ground that he could swing through with no problem. He was now on the top of either the washer or dryer. It was too dark to know for sure. With his small flashlight, he took in the room, careful not to knock anything over or make a sound. He slipped to the door, again waited, listened. Nothing. The kids' room was on the right, and the parents' room was just past on the left. As he slowly closed the kids' bedroom door, he paused. Had he heard a footfall? Seconds passed with no more sound. At this point, the flashlight was off, and he was only seeing with the street light that peeked through the window in the living room. Someone could be hiding in the shadows, so he moved with caution. When he got to the parents' room, he was somewhat surprised that their door was open, but he assumed it was so they could hear the children. How sweet. He waited as they slept, with their backs facing each other. He had played this out in his mind prior. Now that it was real, he was stoked. Slipping around to the far side of the bed, at a snail's pace, he moved in close, and with one roundhouse swing, sent the knife into the man's temple, killing him instantly. He didn't even think there was a jerk of any kind. Pausing to make sure the wife was not disturbed, nothing. So on the same precision, he moved to the other side of the bed. She was sound asleep. Not wanting to press his luck, he moved in with the knife. Her neck was exposed, so with one long downward motion, he sliced from one side of her neck to the other. He jumped back when her eyes opened wide, blinked twice, and then froze open. He was proud of the fact that he didn't make them suffer. After all, none of this was their fault. It was the husband's best friend's. Walking out the front door, there was a figure walking past with a small dog. Neither seemed to pay much attention to him. They had business to attend to, and then back to their cabin. The killer walked with purpose to his car, took a deep breath, thanked the gaming gods, and drove off into the night, never thinking about the dead bodies or the two young toddlers ever again. Chapter 14. The following morning, the neighbors thought it odd that the tenants in Cabin 7 had not been out and about. The family had been there a few days, and each day they were up and out early, making breakfast, laughing with the children, saying hi to all that walked by with their dogs. So eventually, a few of them went to the door to check on them. That is when they noticed the door was ajar. As they pushed the door open, the place was dark. They could hear sounds coming from one of the bedrooms. Maybe they shouldn't, but they went in anyways. Turned on the lights and followed the sounds, but before they could reach them, they came upon the bedroom with the parents, a gruesome scene that none would ever forget. As one called 911, the other started looking for the children. The lovely children, awake, but staying in their beds like their parents had taught them. Each needed a bathroom, and each looked around for their mommy and daddy. The police were there in no time, but it didn't matter. There was no evidence, no weapon, no witnesses, nothing beside a family ruined. There had been no connection between any of the killings. Why would there be? Different states, different MOs, but each drew national attention, and it did not take Marcus long to hear about the latest. The death of his friend hit him hard. He had known Mike and Linda, had taken the kids to the cabin to celebrate their anniversary. They had hit a rough patch and were hoping this time away with just them and minimal distractions would be good for them. They both knew this trip meant everything to their future, either together or apart. It was a special place for the couple. It had been their getaway for years, and they had wanted their kids to love it as much as they did. Marcus could not get over the fact that they had died in such a peaceful place. The killer had done his homework, and Marcus had underestimated him. He would not admit it, but he was scared of what he had unleashed and fearful what the final tally of his decision would cost. He just was in so deep now. It had all just pulled him in. How could he even begin to explain to his family, the families of the murder victims, or the police? How? He couldn't, so he would stay silent and watch and wait his turn to make it right, or at least end it. What choice did he have at this point, really? The closer the killer got, the more tense and real the situation became. He had thought about asking his parents to leave town, send them away for a weekend. But would that stop the killer? Or would he just wait? Or did he have other plans in mind? No way to know. That was only slowly killing Marcus. While Marcus stewed about so many different things, the killer was only focused on what was for dinner before heading to the truck stop he had found for a rest before heading out. The next phase of the game would take him back to the beginning. It was daring for at least two reasons. First, it would take more time, and there would certainly be witnesses of some sort. And second, he intended to replicate Amber's demise, and with that, the authorities would consider one of two things: possible serial killer or copycat. He didn't care. Something told him it must be done. When the game took a weird twist, it was those that could adapt that won. He could adapt better than most. So tomorrow he would do his research, and his stopping grounds would be Bristol, Tennessee, or Virginia, since they bordered right up to one another, he had read somewhere. He was happy to be going back to how this whole part of his life journey had begun. He was a fan of repeating what works and what makes you happy. and Amber had been both. A little shorter episode, but let's stop there. I hope you're enjoying the journey. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm writing this one as we go along. It's different, but I'm enjoying the game. Have a great day.